Took me a long time to figure it out, but I think I have. I think I've got it, folks. So stick with me. Joe Biden mumbles so much, and a lot of what he says is incoherent. So we just misunderstood what Joe Biden was saying, you see. You see, for example, the longest time, I thought, in fact, millions of Americans thought, that Joe Biden was saying he wanted to unite America. He wanted to unite the country. He wasn't. I figured it out. What he was actually saying is he wanted to ignite the country. He wanted to ignite the country, set it on fire, which so far, by the way, he's been very successful in doing. He wants to burn the place down. It's all perfectly clear to me now. I mean, you look at the policies that are clearly designed to damage this country to the point of no return that have been rolled out by Joe Biden and his dementia-addled brain. Last week's fiery speech in Philadelphia was the pinnacle of dividing America. He could have said many things that could have brought us together and been positive. Sadly, he said none of them. Joe Biden has never actually stood for anything. He's been a plagiarist his entire adult life, since college at Syracuse, where he got an E because he plagiarized 5 full pages of somebody else's work in one of his writings. But has been very skilled, he has, in turning elected office into gold for himself. And not just for himself, but for his entire family, including his shady brother Jim and his junkie and hooker-loving son Hunter. While this is going on, America is adrift with a weak economy, an open border, and a foreign policy that nobody could actually defend or define. What is the Joe Biden doctrine? Anyone? Anyone. What is the Joe Biden doctrine? Well, now we have 2 major developments. One that will almost certainly damage the American economy further, and the other that will create a domino effect on food, energy, and just about everything else, creating shortages like we have never seen here before. It'll be a first for America. First, in the face of Joe Biden's appalling energy policies, OPEC announced yesterday that it's now cutting oil production beginning in October. The announcement already pushed the price of Brent crude up by 3.6% in the first day. Add to that the further reduction of Russian energy to Europe, and the EU is facing a bleak winter ahead. Bleak. The nations of Europe have already seen a cost of living explosion that is causing major political backlash in several nations. Here at home, global demand spiking. While Joe Biden is shutting off American energy at every turn, means the prices for electricity, gasoline, and everything else are almost certain to spike again as we head into the heart of winter too. And another developing story. Potential for 115,000 railroad workers to walk off the job shortly. Yeah, let that sink in for a moment. 115,000 rail workers to go on strike at a time when major rail lines have been reducing the amount of freight that can be moved because of a variety of negative factors already. A strike would accelerate increases in energy costs because we do move oil and natural gas and coal by rail. But more frightening, at a time when a war on farming has been undertaken by the Green New Dealers and their socialist allies worldwide, freight trains coming to a halt in America could easily create serious food shortages in the very near future. You see, in mid-August, Joe Biden convened the Presidential Emergency Board, which has since issued its recommendation of a 22% pay increase over 5 years and backdating it to 2020, but the workers have balked at the deal, saying it falls far short of what they need and demand, especially in view of dramatic spikes in inflation, plus skyrocketing health care costs. Now, this is a major problem for Joe Biden and his people. The rail industry is heavily unionized, you see. There are 13 separate unions involved in this negotiation, ranging in size from several hundred to tens of thousands. Complicated. There's not been a major rail strike in the United States since the early 1990s, and one right now could not come at a worse time for the country or the Democrats that are already facing stiff headwinds in the midterm election. A national rail strike would have major economic impacts, well, almost immediately. The 13 unions that were once united have now fragmented, and they've been in negotiations since 2019, and the window prohibiting a strike on the rails ends on September 16th under the Railway Labor Act. Little education for you. Two of the major sticking points, listen to this. Two of the major sticking points are sick time. Believe it or not, railroad workers get 0 sick days. None. None. And Joe Biden's board refused to even discuss that. And the very strict attendance policies, both are deal killers to the unions, it sounds like today. Now I do wonder, what Transportation Secretary, little Petey Buttigieg, will do about that. I mean, there were 6,000 canceled flights just on Sunday this weekend. Another problem he promised to tackle and take care of, nothing's happened. It's just as bad, if not worse. By comparison, a rail strike will be far more devastating to Little Pete and Dementia Joe, neither of whom seem to have any idea how to deal with a crisis of any sort. The last year I can find reliable reporting, railroads accounted for about $300 billion in economic activity. That was 2014. It is significantly larger now. And again, with the U.S. already in a mild recession, this kind of disruption further to the already fragile supply chains could have a devastating domino effect on the country. But don't worry. I'm sure it was top of mind while Joe Biden was visiting ice cream shops and beaches over the long Labor Day weekend. And how ironic is that? Big labor on a collision course with a very big strike that'll do tremendous damage to you and I. And the administration is nowhere to be seen, nowhere. These are many of the reasons it's clear Joe Biden really meant to say he would ignite the country, not unite the country. He's going to set it on fire. And do not think that this rail strike is anything but a major catastrophe. 115,000 rail workers that are not allowed sick time, that have very strict attendance policies, are saying no to a 22% increase. It goes back to 2020. But with the rate of inflation at 8.5% now, over 9% last month, this just isn't enough to get the job done. Joe Biden only convened his emergency board 30 days before the deadline of the 3-year conversation. 3 years they've been negotiating. The railroads come to a stop. This country most likely will come to a stop as well. Shortages in food and everything you find in the stores. Plus, going into winter, a shortage of natural gas, heating oil, which is already at $5 a gallon, plus coal. They won't be firing up electric cars in California for years to come. We'll have more on this after the break. We're just getting started. It's the Steve Gruber Show. Don't go anywhere.